How will ASU football's new interim head coach handle the tough road ahead?
How did Iman Asanovic and the ASU volleyball team fare against their rivals down south?
And what's new with ASU softball as the maroon and gold scrimmage took place just last night? All of your questions answered on Cronkite Sports Live.
Hello and welcome into Studio 6 for another edition of Cronkite Sports Live. I'm Sammy Miller alongside Matt Venezia, and boy, do we have some news for you today.
Yes, Sammy, if you haven't heard, Herm Edwards is out following the humiliating loss a week ago. Ray Anderson said it was a mutual decision to have his duties relinquished. The reactions around the news, though, seemed like it was the right move. I agree, the NFL model didn't work at all here with ASU, but to move on this early into the season, I don't know about that.
Matt, I think Ray Anderson and company finally had enough of losing. It is a Power 5 school that should have more Pac-12 titles under their belt, but they don't. The Eastern Michigan loss, which was one of their worst non-conference home upsets in school history, I believe was the icing on the cake. But with Edwards out, ASU needed an interim head coach, and they went with running backs coach Sean Iguano, who spoke to the media Monday on what it means to receive this opportunity.
I'm an Arizona guy. I've been here for 20-some years. I understand the landscape and what it means. My kids are born in Arizona. There's not one coach that I think in the nation that loves Arizona and is in place at Arizona State that it'll think can do a better job than I can. That's just the way I always bet on myself. But just to let you understand, my kids are Arizona kids. And so this means a lot for me. This means a lot for my family. I get emotional. I think this means a lot for the coaches of Arizona and their dreams and inspiration for them. So I got a lot on my back, but hopefully to prove them that my success is achievable.
Matt, it's hard to not get emotional when seeing a coach up there so openly express his feelings on how much this opportunity means to not only him, but to his family as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all in on this guy, Sean Iguano. However, as this is all happening, though, reports have been released saying that ASU coaches within the program were leaking info to opponents to induce the parting of ways with Herm Edwards. To fill you in on that, here's Ethan Tuttle.
Well, things just went from bad to worse for the Sun Devils. There have been recent reports coming out from Doug Haller at The Athletic that some of ASU staffers leaked info to opponents. Quoting the Athletics article here, an opposing coach recently told The Athletic it wasn't hard to get intel on the season's team because some within Arizona State Athletics wanted a coaching change. Now with Herm out and Sean Iguano in taking over at the interim head coaching position for what seems to be the rest of the season, there's going to be a lot of eyes on the program, and there's news flying out of ASU football left and right, but if Sun Devil fans are looking for a silver lining, this might be it because players have been excited with the energy they've seen at practice under Iguano so far. So Sun Devil fans will get the chance to see a different team on the field this Saturday when they take on Utah. Of course, when your team's info is leaked, it's that much more of an uphill battle to win games. For now, though, I'm Ethan Tuttle with this Cronkite Sports Report.
Well, winning a football game is hard enough when information about your team isn't being released, Ethan. Right now, Iguano is tasked with doing so at ASU, but our Peyton Gallagher breaks down possible head coaching candidates from outside of the program.
Coastal Carolina head coach Jamie Chadwell has been about as good as it gets these past couple of years. No, like literally, among all FBS coaches, only Nick Saban has won a higher percentage of his games since 2020. His bleeding edge offense and ability to foster a can-do culture has allowed his Chanticleers to transition to FBS and find themselves ranked in consecutive seasons in only their first 5 years. Known nationally for his flawless mullet, sported during the 2021 season to fulfill a promise he made to players, Chadwell's leadership style has generated a good love and feeling in the CCU program. And that's something ASU could certainly use a helping of with whoever they decide to employ next. Schematically, Chadwell is a revolutionary, using a hybridized triple option spread offense to ransack opponents and extract every drip of talent in his players. It's an opportunity to get ahead of the curve for Arizona State. Jamie might just be Chip Kelly at New Hampshire, waiting to break out at Oregon. Another avenue for ASU could be Oklahoma's gunslinging OC, Jeff Lebby. Lebby, who at 38 years old would be ASU's youngest head coach since the hiring of a 29-year-old Frank Kush in 1981, has piloted a top 25 scoring offense at 3 separate schools the last 4 seasons. A student of the air raid, Lebby has received his education from the best offensive tutors there are. Bob Stoops, Art Briles, Jeff Heupel, and most recently Lane Kiffin have helped Lebby sculpt his own incendiary offensive philosophy. This season is the first year Lebby has worked with a defensive-minded head coach in Brett Venables. We've gotten to see his full vision on display. His ideas energizing the Oklahoma offense to a clip of 42.3 points per game. If Ray Anderson wants to go big game hunting, there may be no bigger game in town than former Florida and Mississippi State head coach Dan Mullen. Mullen is currently punching the clock as a worldwide leader, providing his skills as an analyst at ESPN. If Mullen is ready to get back to coaching, there aren't many more qualified than him. Prior to his termination at Florida after a 5-6 2021, Mullen had been the second longest tenured coach in the SEC, only trailing, you guessed it, Nick Saban. Hired by Mississippi State in 2009, Mullen lifted a program that was 36-9 since the turn of the century and went 69-46 over 9 seasons. This is especially impressive considering that at the time, the SEC West was maybe the most difficult division in the history of college football, with each of its 7 teams achieving a top 5 AP ranking in that span. Mullen even boosted the Bulldogs to a first in school history #1 ranking in 2014. All the while receiving acclaim for his cultivation of quarterbacks. Mullen has a writing credit on the success stories of Chris Leak, Alex Smith, Kyle Trask, Dak Prescott, and even the Heisman winner Tim Tebow. It goes without saying that luring Dan Mullen to Tempe would be a massive smash of a hire. One thing is for fact, there is a lot to figure out for this Arizona State football program in the coming days, weeks, and months. What we do know is that there are plenty of good options for them to pick from.
Plenty of good-looking resumes to consider. Thank you, Peyton, for keeping us all in the loop with that. And now that we know who's replacing Herm Edwards in Tempe this Saturday, we can actually start talking about the matchup. And to do so, we welcome Jonah Krell to the desk. Jonah, I first wanted to start with the reactions to the Sean Iguana promotion have been positive, but still things look pretty bleak for ASU over the next few weeks. So what needs to happen for the Sun Devils to finally turn this thing around and right the ship?
Yeah, Matt, I go back to Ray Anderson and Sean Iguano's press conferences earlier this week, and the wording is all right there. A sense of urgency, play fast, physical, play smart. And in the last 2 games, ASU has been outsnapped by 41 plays combined. A lot of that has been a lack of aggressiveness and lethargic effort and physicality on both ends of the ball. And if you start with offense, obviously X-Validate, he's the key, but run the ball with a little bit more tempo. Put the defense on its heels and give Emory Jones the ball, make quick passes, just something to mix it up and make it less one-dimensional. And then on the other side, the run defense has just been gassed, shredded, 175 yards per game on average, 102nd in the country. I think to change that, you got to shoot the gaps a little bit quicker, make the tackles, and finish plays to something that they've struggled with in discipline, like Sean Iguano has talked about. And I think combining all those elements, Sean Iguano can learn from some of these mistakes the Sun Devils have made and make the most of this season still. There's a lot of time, and unlike Herm Edwards, who's struggled to make those adjustments.
And it seems like obviously the Sun Devils have to play a lot better, but Saturday's matchup, the well-documented 13th ranked Utah Utes meet ASU in the first conference game of the season. What makes Utah so dangerous in this matchup and so far throughout the season?
Well, I think the question should really be what doesn't make them dangerous. I mean, it's hard to find blemishes on a team that's just so complementary. And of course, you start with Cameron Rising, the quarterback, so much poise and leadership in the pocket. But the 2 position groups that really stand out to me, running backs and tight ends, all the primary guys on those groups physical bruisers, and they have a lot of size and athleticism. You start with the rushing game, top 30 offense, 200 yards per game led by Tavion Thomas, and then the freak of nature's tight ends, Brent Keithy and Dalton Kincaid. You move them around, you put them in the slot, and it can present some matchup nightmares for ASU's secondary. And then the defense, only 90 passing yards per game, only 1 touchdown given up by this defense. A lot of ball hawks, not a ton of sacks generated, but it's not important when you're only giving up 14 points per game. I mean, just overall, it's hard to find flaws. A lot of execution.
Now, with all those challenges that you've spoken about, there seems to be, no way that the Sun Devils come into this as a favorite, because they're not. They're the 15.5-point underdog. Is there any possible scenario that ASU leaves Tempe on Saturday with a win?
So to see that, you have to go back to week 1 when Utah narrowly lost to Florida in that exciting game. And a couple things really stand out. First, Utah doesn't really go up tempo. That's been ASU's kryptonite for the last couple games, and they run a methodical pace. Something like staying at that same level playing field can really help ASU. And another thing, they struggled to contain quarterback Anthony Richardson. He ran wild, over 100 rushing yards, and the team collectively over 200 rushing yards. So I think for ASU, how that relates to them, Glenn Thomas needs to utilize Emory Jones more as a playmaker, get him involved with some zone reads, some play action passes, just something to open it up and make it less one-dimensional, like I said earlier. And ASU is coming in big underdogs, like we talked about. 15.5-point favorites, the Gators are. So why not take some chances? Move the ball downfield with some shots. Eventually, those can hit. Vary the formations and play style. And who knows, we might even see some no-huddle offense. I think this could be a really different-looking Sun Devil team with everything that's gone on this week.
Yeah, and there's been a lot. So thank you, Jonah, for all of that. All eyes will be on Sean Aguano and the Sun Devils Saturday night at 7:30 in Tempe. Pac-12 play opens this weekend, and it doesn't get any easier for the Sun Devils down the stretch. I mean, yikes. 3 ranked opponents to begin the Aguano era. Not easy by any means. USC is a national champion favorite, and Washington just upset then number 11 Michigan State a week ago. I mean, this thing could get ugly very quickly for ASU if they're not careful.
ASU soccer is kicking off Pac-12 play right now, and as we speak, they are competing against Colorado, and the game is tied 2-2. If one name should come to mind when I say ASU women's soccer, it should be Nicole Douglas, who continues to show why she is one of the best players in the country. On the other side of the ball today is another national standout by the name of Shira James. She's currently 1 goal ahead of Douglas on the NCAA goal scoring list, as both athletes are in the top 5. We'll see if there's any shifts there after today's match. But in the meantime, our Blake Neiman is here in studio with more on Douglas's impact so far this season for the Sun Devils.
This past week, ASU soccer forward Nicole Douglas was named the Pac-12 Player of the Week after her standout performances against both Grambling State and Toledo, in which she found the back of the net not once, not twice, but 4 times in all. The scoring frenzy put Douglas in a category of her own, as she is now ASU's all-time leader in career scoring and game-winning goals. With 9 total goals on the short season thus far, Douglas now leads the nation with 1.5 goals per game and 3.17 points per game. Not to mention, all of her 9 goals came in the past 5 games alone, upping her goals per game mark to a whopping 1.8. Following the Sun Devils' 5-0 victory over Grambling State, Douglas said that the key has been not forcing the ball forward and letting the opportunities open up as the game progresses. This strategy has proven to be effective in non-conference play, where the Sun Devils have posted 4 wins, no losses, and 2 draws. As ASU is now officially underway with Pac-12 play, Douglas will look to exceed the high bar she set last season, being that she led the conference in goals and was named to the all-conference first team. If Douglas keeps this pace up, she will be well on her way to passing her school record of 19 goals set last year and keeping ASU women's soccer in the national spotlight.
Nicole Douglas simply can't stop scoring. Same with ASU volleyball. Iman Asanovic, she was the star of Wednesday night's opening match of Pac-12 play as the Devils took a trip 2 hours south to the Dirty T for a date with the Wildcats. Roberta Rebello, Levinska, all the ladies are fired up, so let's take you out to the McHale Center for the opening set of highlights here in this heavily matchup here at the McHale Center. So we'll take you out to the first set. Snyder diving out, same with Claudia Stolke. This thing's gonna pinball around a little bit, a couple diving plays left and right. But here's where it gets interesting. Watch this play here by Jelly Sear. She's going to get it up to no one else but Iman Isanovic. Not many athletes in the country can do that off their back foot. A nice line shot there for the kill. But Ziana Flows there in the middle. She makes a play for Arizona, and the Wildcats would end up taking that first set against ASU. The Sun Devils, though, they weren't phased. Why? Because they have Marta Levinska, the Latvia native there. She had 17 kills on the match. Here's another one, though. On the overpass that was dug out, Marta does capitalize. Why would she not? She's been fantastic all year long, and this was the final kill of the match. It's the sophomore Jelly Sear stepping into that one. The Sun Devils down against the rivals. The Cats go down in Tucson. So a good start there, obviously, in the conference for ASU as they went down to Tucson. And a few days ago now, they got that win. They're going to Boulder on Sunday to see the Buffs, a team ASU took down twice in as many appearances a season ago. And Andrew Lynn gets us ready for the match.
Matt, Smiles were a rarity to start conference play a season ago, but after the 4-set win in Tucson on Wednesday, they were contagious, and rightfully so. Resiliency was key in sets 2 and 3 as ASU found ways to fight back after dropping several consecutive points. The concern coming into the match, though, was how was ASU's middle blockers going to fare against a talented U of A bunch? And the answer was they played better than previous numbers showed, keeping the margin differential in blocks to just +1 in the Wildcats' favor. A much improved night at the net. Looking to Sunday, though, there's one major question in my mind. Can the Sun Devils win the first set against Colorado to give them momentum for the rest of the match? Against Arizona, the cards didn't fall in their favor, but that did not end up mattering. Against CU, though, who is playing a much higher level to start the year, it might. The Buffalo have won first sets 64% of the time compared to the Sun Devils, only winning set 1 38% of the time. After a game in Boulder on Sunday, the Sun Devils traveled to Oregon for matches with the Ducks and Beavers, concluding 13 consecutive road matches.
Thank you, Andrew, for all that info. Yeah, we're going to talk about those road matchups right now because forever ago, it seems like, the Sun Devils went 2-1 in the Webb Burbridge Classic out there in Tempe. From there, ASU hopped on a plane to Atlanta to play in the Georgia Tech Invitational, where the Sun Devils started hot, but the real test was too much, in which ASU fell to the then number 5 Yellow Jackets over the weekend. We saw Iman Isanovic climb up the list for ASU in total kills in program history, now at number 16. Next, ASU traveled to a much closer state and visited Waco, Texas to compete in the Baylor Invitational. The Evansville match was the only one ASU got a win in, where they racked up 13 aces, 4th most for the Sun Devils in a single match, and the Devils are now 2-2 in ranked matchups. You thought one trip to the Lone Star State was enough? Well, the Red Raider Classic was enticing enough for 2 trips to Texas. The Sun Devils were reverse swept by SMU, and their lone win was against Oral Roberts. ASU is now 2-2 in 5-set matches, and the trip didn't end there. The Sun Devils took down the Wildcats in Tucson, which we just talked about, and a trip to Boulder awaits them on Sunday. But then the Oregon schools, one last road trip for ASU before they're finally home at the beginning of October, the 7th and 9th, to see the LA schools.
Quite the stretch on the road for sure, Matt. After that long road trip, Sun Devil fans will finally be able to cheer on their team at Desert Financial on October 7th against UCLA, which will be one of their toughest opponents ASU has seen thus far. Another team that is no stranger to competing against the best in the country is ASU Softball. This offseason has been a wild one for the Sun Devils, and their maroon and gold scrimmage last night was their first chance to show off their new coaches and squad. Our Reese Andrews has more on those who took their talents elsewhere, as well as the fresh faces in Tempe.
ASU Softball is back in action after quite the chaotic offseason, losing most of their starting rotation in Mac Morgan to Texas, Addison Royalty to Florida State University, and lefty Lindsay Lopez to the University of Washington, along with power hitter Christiana Watson to Duke, and starting infielders Sid Sanders and Alina Torres to the national champion Oklahoma Sooners. To go along with all of that, head coach Trisha Ford packed it up to Texas A&M, bringing in the University of Texas former assistant Megan Bartlett as the new head coach. The Sun Devils started their fall ball season with the first maroon and gold scrimmage of the year, with the maroon team taking this one 8-2. Some of the standouts of the game were returners Jazz Hill and Mercer Schold, along with newcomers showing some promise with the blazing speed of Kaylin McCarthy and the dynamic arms of Kenzie Brown and Deborah Jones. Jazz Hill got things started early with a 2-run homer on her first at-bat, bringing home McKenna Harper, who also had a solid game from the plate. The only returner from the mound is 5th-year righty Marissa Schold, who started for the Gold team and sent 6 home in her 3 innings. Bartlett had plenty of good things to say about Schuld when it comes to her leadership to the newcomers.
Because with a lot of new, there's a ton of questions there, right? There's different ways to derive confidence. Repping a ton, you having been there before. Some of it is just flat out belief, right? And I think Marissa, she's been really good about that.
The Sun Devils will continue their fall ball schedule next Friday against South Mountain College at 6 p.m. at Alberta B. Farrington Softball Stadium. Reese Andrews, Cronkite Sports.
Good info there with ASU Softball, a group that has plenty of question marks entering this season despite hosting a super regional at the end of May a few months back. Same equipment, bigger diamond. Major League Baseball is well represented in Arizona with the local Diamondbacks playing just a few blocks down the road from here. The MLB is also significant here because of the Arizona Fall League. Anthony Remedios explains more and mentions a handful of former Sun Devils who will be taking the field this year.
Founded in 1992, the Arizona Fall League will return to the Valley for its 30th season. Every year, each Major League Baseball franchise sends 6 prospects to the league, a total of 180 players. Those players are then divided up into 6 teams, 5 Major League clubs per team. 3 former Sun Devils were named to this year's rosters, announced last week, infielders Gage Workman and Trevor Hauver, and pitcher Justin Fall. Hauver and Workman were drafted in the 3rd and 4th rounds respectively of the 2020 MLB draft, while Fall was drafted in 2021.
Center. Watson looks up and the ball game is tied.
With ASU losing 3 pitchers to Tommy John surgery early in the season, Fall led the starting rotation in 2021, earning a .409 ERA, 47 strikeouts, and a .144 WHIP through his 14 starts and 18 total appearances. Hauver was a fierce competitor in his final 2 seasons as a Sun Devil, finishing the 2019-2020 seasons with a .339 batting average in each of those seasons and a .1007 and 1189 OPS respectively. The 2022 Arizona Fall League season begins Monday, October 3rd. From there, teams will compete in a 6-week season at various spring training sites across the valley. Schedules, rosters, and more information can be found on the Arizona Fall League website at mlb.com/Arizona-Fall-League. For WCSN, this was Anthony Remedios.
It's always exciting to see how players fare in the Fall League, and these Sun Devils will be no different, Anthony. It should also be fun to watch the ASU women's triathlon squad, who at this point seem like all they know how to do is win year after year. Our Isai Romero has more on the team's expectations this season.
Thanks, Sammy. Arizona State enters only its 7th year in women's triathlon, and the expectation is the same as always, to keep the national title here in Tempe. The Sun Devils have enjoyed a lot of success, winning the last 5 national championships. And under 7th year head coach Cliff English, ASU is looking to continue its winning ways this season. The Sun Devils are now led by star senior Liberty Ricca, who is coming off a solid campaign this summer. The Colorado native placed first in July at the U23 USA National Championships and is looking to continue her form in the ASU season. Someone else to look out for in the 2022 season for the Devils will be sophomore Alexa Corsau. Corsau competed alongside Ricca this summer and placed 24th in the Triathlon World University Championships in Brazil. English and his crew will head to Colorado for their first 2 races of the season, Saturday and Sunday, while they will look to make their first steps towards a 6-peat. Back to you guys.
National championships seem to be the takeaway from that, and while it may take some time for Sun Devil hockey to hang up banners in the rafters of Mullet Arena, the venue itself is looking like it's ready to do so. A few weeks back, we had a chance to take a peek at the new home for hockey, gymnastics, and wrestling, and simply, I'm just blown away. Now, to get you caught up to speed with what's going on today, Let There Be Ice. This image was released just a few days ago, and as you can see, the Coyotes are getting some love too. With the half Kachina, half Pitchfork logo at center ice, the Sun Devils, though, game day can't come soon enough. Don't miss ASU hockey's first contest in this new era for the program when Colgate and Arizona State drop the puck on October 14th.
Coaches come and go. That is the nature of any sport. But for Herm Edwards, there is much more to this story. Let me take you back to December 2017 when he brought the NFL Pro model to Tempe. Coaches with former NFL experience brought in to most importantly develop players so they rise up the NFL draft boards, but to also win games. That's what they said at least. He did produce winning seasons for the Sun Devils, had some upset wins, but they never won any substantial bowl games, or more importantly, the Pac-12 title. Last year was one of their best chances to do so. A veteran squad with NFL prospect pieces, with expectations that it was the season the NFL model puzzle would come together. However, disappointing performances and an NCAA investigation left the puzzle unsolved. Then on top of all of that, NIL was brought to the table, creating a college football scene that completely differed from the one Edwards entered in 2017. Money became the forefront in everyone's minds, and the transfer portal became a quote-unquote free agency. Edwards was simply put unprepared for this situation, losing multiple star players and losing faith from a fan base that believed the athletic department was cleaning up for a mess he caused. This brings us to where we are now. One of ASU's worst home non-conference upsets in school history, a 30-21 loss against Eastern Michigan that would mark the final chapter of Edwards' ASU story. But where one story ends, another begins. New interim head coach Shawnee Guano now has the opportunity to do something great, an opportunity to truly represent the state of Arizona. Some may say the program has hit rock bottom, but it's all in how you see it. Maybe it's just the Sun Devils have nowhere to go but up, and that's the way it is.
Tough there for the Sun Devils with what's going on, but not for these players here in the top plays. Cologne is going to get it outside the 18-yard box to Van Dersen, who picks the corner perfectly. Her second goal of the year. The Sun Devils rolled. We'll see a little bit more on this matchup in just a second.
And for number 2, we are sticking it with ASU women's soccer. Kennedy Mayo plays a ball into Nicole Douglas. Her touch is a little off, but she makes her way by not 1, not 2, but 3 defenders and does what she does best with yet another goal. ASU would go on to win 5-0 over Toledo.
We teased this play earlier with volleyball. We're bringing it back for the number 1 play at the McHale Center on Wednesday night. Ella Snyder and Claudia Stolke, I just don't know how, with all that flexibility, able to keep that ball off the ground. And then Annika Larson-Numer gets hit up high, but here's where it happens most. So Fellow gets it over the net, and then it now comes up for Asanovic, who puts it down the line. ASU with a 4-set win there. And that's all we have for you here in Studio 6 at Cronkite. We want to thank everyone who has helped put this thing together in the control room, the talent, the studio. It's been a lot of fun here on this Friday afternoon here in Phoenix. But for everyone, again, this is Sammy Miller. I'm Matt Venezia. We say so long, and we'll see you next week for another episode of Cronkite Sports Live.